really important. Think about what you're going to be doing, but you must act to make a difference in order to transform the D&I landscape in your chapter and beyond. And so what we're going to talk about in probably about 25 minutes, that's the plan I have, is the PRSA newly minted. I'm still calling it newly minted because it was approved by the board in May of this year. But the newly minted PRSA D&I strategic plan. It's critically important undergirding for our efforts. Then we will transition into a lot of what Lily talked about in the introduction about what you can do, the resources available, and then we'll have a discussion more about these activities. So the first thing I want to start with is sharing with you what I believe is an all-powerful moment right now. Communicators, we help others find their voice. We help others build conversations from a crisis communications point of view, from a media engagement point of view, from events management, from employee engagement, any number of factors. That's what we do. So we have a critical opportunity to be a leader, to get in front of this when we help our organizations really understand diversity and inclusion. I start out with that slide because I think the solution is in our wheelhouse as communicators. And how often do you get to be at the front of a major burgeoning change opportunity? So first I want to talk inward, PRSA. We have to get our own house in order. We have to do the due diligence necessary to ensure that PRSA can even speak, that has a bully pulpit or has the wherewithal to even preach to others about being engaged in diversity and inclusion. We must have our own house in order. So the overarching goal, there's one goal in the strategic plan: position PRSA as a model for the communications profession. In the spirit of full transparency, this was not the D&I strategic planning committee's initial desire, because we think we don't want to be positioned to be exemplary in our leadership as an organization in diversity and inclusion. We want to be it. So we understood sometimes you have to compromise. So I say all of that to say this is not about looking good. It's about being a leader. And so I hope you take that with the very important tone that I'm intending to express around. It's not just about how we look on the outside. Do we have one of these, two of those, three of those? Did we have a session this year? No. It's about making sure that we have real, actionable, deliverable change within our organizations. We're measuring this. We did our initial survey in order to give us a baseline for how we're doing, if we're really moving the needle, October 2019. Later this month and into November, we will do a follow-up survey in order to assess and address what things look like and how we're doing. So you heard the phrase, you can't manage what you don't measure. So we have to measure something. So this plan is chock full of measures. There are 4 objectives in the plan. The first objective is to increase awareness and understanding of PRSA amongst its members and staff. That goal, that objective is there for a reason. I led the 11-month research effort to build the strategic plan. And one of the things that I will tell you that I walked away with understanding is there is not common understanding of what a D&I even means. What does it mean to be a progressive, diverse and inclusive organization? What is it not? It's not EEO. It's not tokenism. It's not affirmative action. It's not uh, quotas. Um, it does rightly include all of the things you think about when you think about diversity, to include race, ethnicity, age, gender, sexual orientation, etc. But there still was a great deal of misunderstanding. So we felt like we needed to do, for lack of a better word, stuff internal to the organization to build that level of awareness of what is it we're doing and why we're doing it. The other thing we wanted to do on objective 2 was increase diverse representation among leadership. So no matter what we say from our mouths, remember, it's not about what we say, it's what we do. If when you stand back and look at the landscape, the leadership landscape at the district level, at the section level, at the national board level, on chapters, if it's not reflective of what we know as a full array of diversity within our society writ large, we still have a little bit of a disconnect, don't we? So that is why objective number 2 is so important. Not only do we have to be good, do good, we have to reflect that. So those are 2 of the 4 objectives in the plan. The remaining 2 objectives are increasing awareness of PRSA amongst our stakeholders externally regarding our diversity and inclusion strategies. So one of the reasons objective 3 is here, and I make no bones about it. This is member recruitment. This is attracting individuals who may not have felt PRSA was a home for them and getting them engaged. It's about saying to publics, whether they be Black, white, what have you, this is an organization that's welcoming to all. And the optics of not having representation that takes in all of the dimensions of diversity and inclusion, you're sending a message. So we, 1, have to get our house in order. 2, we got to make sure that our leadership reflects what we think it should in terms of representation. And 3, we want to tell our story so that others can be attracted to what we know is such a fine organization. The 4th objective has to do with our pipeline development. If we don't improve young people's matriculation into PRSA, we as an organization will die on the vine. Chapters, districts, sections, no one is immune. What do I mean by that? We have today roughly 10,000 PRSSA members. In terms of the recruitment path from PRSSA to PRSA, it is very high churn rate out of the organization. Why? Why is that happening? Our students are our greatest ambassadors, our future leaders. What is it that's not attracting them to make that move to PRSA? We know that they are not joiners. We already get that. We know that sometimes young people and the money challenges exist. We get that. And there have been strategies to reduce rates. But here's one thing I'm going to say to you. And I believe this from the bottom of my heart, and I believe it because I live it. I have 2 of these little creatures at home of my own. My daughter is 25. I know I don't look it. My son is 19. And these kids, these young people, they spend money on what they want to spend money on. They find the money. So in my judgment, we need to do more to lean in to figure out and attract these young people of multicultural backgrounds, as well as new professionals. What do I mean by new professionals? So of course you can consider somebody just getting into the industry, just starting their own independent practice. But it doesn't mean that a new pro has to be a millennial or Gen Z. Suppose you've been in corporate world working for someone else for 25 years and then you start your own shop. That makes you a new pro, right? So how do we make sure when new pros and multicultural students come into the organization, they're sticky, they remain, they don't churn out? We have to put time and attention around it. And I'll talk to you more about strategy number 2 in just a sec. In fact, right now. So I'll go back. One of the things that we knew we needed to do was lean into HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and Hispanic serving institutions. How will we support them? By working with their faculty advisors, by having more consistent conversations, by encouraging local PRSA chapters to be intentional with consistent outreach. But the other thing is we wanted to make sure scholarships, educational attainment opportunities remained. And I'm going to tell you a quick story, which you probably have heard. This year, in 2020, of all years, we did not have money at the National D&I Committee to award scholarships that had been awarded since 1989. PRSA just did not have the funds. So what we did is we quickly, because my background's in fundraising, started thinking about what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? We got to do it. And we found the money in March of this year to award 2 $1,500 scholarships. But again, because of my background in fundraising, I said, there's no way we can stop there. We never, ever, ever want to get in this circumstance again. So we need to endow a fund that perpetually churns off interest income so that we have scholarships to award. That's putting thinking, acting for the long term of transforming the landscape. That's a nice little tidy example of that. And I'm sticking to this slide because I don't want to lose sight of the fact that I need you guys' help. We have to get this scholarship to a minimum of $50,000 by the end of this year. We're doing something pretty unique and exciting with the D&I committee. On Tuesday, October 27, we will be having a virtual fundraising concert where proceeds from the concert will benefit this scholarship. I'll tell you more about that. Resources. This year, we also did something else. Check my time, 12:16. We updated our national D&I toolkit. Toolkit had been updated probably since 2016. So this toolkit, at first we branded it as a toolkit for each chapter's D&I liaison. But we stepped back from that because we're getting so much in the way of feedback. And now we think it's a liaison that can go for sections, districts, any chapter leader, because it's inclusive of a lot of things. And so this toolkit includes the roles and responsibilities of your national D&I committee, a definition, really more, a better way of saying is a contextual overview of diversity and inclusion, the job description for your chapter D&I liaison, and a number of other features. I am happy to share this deck with Lily and others, and I encourage you to visit the URL that's identified not only here, but also, I'll go back, with the strategic plan. Because at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day, we want you to read it, know it, understand it. This is one of the resources that I chose to lift out of this presentation in order to get some engagement and hopefully when Q&A begin a dialogue. I am often just struck by how folks, I'm in higher education, say, we just can't find minority diverse talent. And I just want to go, what? No. I mean, I see these great students all day, every day. Um, the other thing we hear, we don't know what to do to recognize and celebrate diversity and inclusion. So in the toolkit, and lifted out here for you, is just a cheat sheet of opportunities if you are so inclined. Because while no one's saying take your whole year and make it a D&I year, there are a plethora of opportunities for you to lean in to presentation of your chapter organization of being more attuned to D&I issues by recognizing varied D&I months and looking at features and factors that make the most sense for your area to amplify. Most chapters have a monthly meeting of some sort. Pick one. Pick one. You have a newsletter. The newsletter goes out once a month. Pick a topic. It's so easy to do. And it's just a matter of thinking about it. So who's your newsletter editor? Hey, here's a calendar of events. Can you find a ghost writer to do something in June on LGBTQ? Hey, February's coming up. We know that's Black History Month. Is there somebody that can do an op-ed in our newsletter? So I put that there to help demonstrate how leaning into this is not as cumbersome or difficult as you might think. There are also a few other things. Remember I mentioned about the D&I toolkit and how it hadn't been updated since 2016. Let me tell you something that was in that toolkit. In that toolkit was a page, and the page had on it, as one of its recommendations to Chapter D&I Liaison, was something like how to talk to ethnic groups, how to talk to African Americans. And I must share, when I read that, I was completely taken aback. And what I said was, well, the same way you talk to other people. What in the world are they talking about? Ethnic language. So we made a point to lean into this to say, wait a minute, folks, communicators, let's not talk like that. Let's just look at some inclusive language guides, because if you're in doubt of how to say something, here are some guides that are published by myriad organizations that will help you be the best communicator and position yourself as a forward-looking leader, not talking about how to talk to ethnic people or using ethnic language. So I fully encourage you to make yourself familiar with the varied inclusive language guides that are available, and they are readily available in a number of fronts. I want to now pause for a second, and I have a bunch of pictures here. And what these pictures represent, I know they all look like they're from theatrical performances, but they are intentional in representing different people, different ages, kind of, an older gent, youngster, this is a child below the age of 16, races, genders. You have to be cognizant in your presentation, in your newsletters, in your PowerPoint presentations. It's just, what did I say at the start of the presentation? Think, act. Just try to be attuned and sensitive to what your representations really can mean to diverse audiences. And this shows you the different landscape of opportunities. The other thing that I want to point out by this picture, avoid settling for stereotypes, which settling for diversity, which play to stereotypes. The gent here in the center, I did a presentation with him, and he's the one that shared most of these images with me. And what he said was, he is a performer, a singer, and he sings opera. Um, but this image was captured with he and several other opera singers. You don't normally connote opera with Black male singers. And what he said was this picture was used over and over and over again in his home state for anything Black history, whether it's R&B, whether it's gospel, whether it is just Black men hanging out. It wasn't about promoting an operatic performance. And he said that bothered him. He was in it. He appreciated the use of the image, but that was a stereotype that assumed there are all these Black guys, they must be singing R&B or something else. To the right, this particular slide, it's about church. Church, religion means so much to many different people, and it's not always just female. So these are two images that reflect the need for us to be very careful in our, stereotyping. This is another image of stereotyping. So the snarling female, the I was trying to think of another word, but I'm not going to use a curse word, but then you got the wide-eyed, Black guy. Oh. And then you have the fat person, overweight, weight challenge, whatever the right word is, eating. You have to be really careful about the image, because another thing that happens is our unconscious biases come out in what we present. So how do we counter that? We have to be conscious of them. How do we become conscious of them? By learning, doing, engaging, and thinking more. So some of these articles talk about that. Again, these are hot links, and when the deck is emailed to you, they'll be clickable. But ways that you can help educate yourself, build your own knowledge base on diversity, inclusion, what it means, what it doesn't mean, and how you can be a better communicator. The last bullet on this page, I think, is the one of the most important. If you work for a company, talk to your HR department about ways to have courageous conversations on diversity and inclusion in the workplace. It doesn't have to be a radical takeover. You won't be perceived as a militant, but it would put you at the forefront. Look in your own personal life around the multitude of folks that you come in contact with. Do the folks that you come in contact with most frequently look like you, sound like you, dress like you, go to the same, bar, gym, church, restaurants? I would suggest to you to be mindful, intentional about kind of moving outside your circle a little bit, figuring out ways to, really work as what can I do at my school, at my job, at my PTA, at my agency, or whatever, to talk to disparate audiences, synagogues, churches, mosques, LGBTQ leaders. Engage, engage, engage. It will make you a better communicator, and it will help us in transforming the landscape. So as we come up on the 12:30 hour, my final admonitions, we are in PRSA's Diversity and Inclusion Month. I hope you read and saw Strategies and Tactics. I hope you pulled that middle spread. I know it's not mailed, but if it were mailed, it would be a middle spread that has listing of the D&I chapter liaison from across the country. There are 110 chapters. Not all chapters have a D&I liaison. We understand that, but those that do are highlighted. Further, in that spread are 4 to 5 different articles on this topic. Share that, repurpose that content. Consider what you might do for the remainder of D&I month. The other thing I want to point out to you is here, read that strategic plan and share insights that you feel can strengthen the execution of that plan. In addition, Pittsburgh, build a D&I calendar for the remainder of 2020, and then begin thinking now of 2021. And finally, reach out to us at the National D&I Committee because we want to support you. So communicate for equity, diversity, and inclusion. I love that picture. I am now ready for questions. I will stop the share, and Lily, I give it back.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so we're ready to open up to questions. And like I said earlier, just feel free to use the chat feature, raise your hand, or I actually think you guys have access to unmuting yourselves. So feel free to do that as well. But do you guys have any questions for Felicia?
Hi, Felicia. Thank you for that presentation. That was really great and just inspiring. I still consider myself, I'm not that far out of college, so I still, put myself in that young pros category, and I appreciate you touching on that and just your dedication to involving our young professionals and developing them. And I kind of wanted, I'm just surprised that toolkit was so dated, and having something said like there's a certain way to talk to people of different ethnicities kind of blows my mind, as I'm sure it did yours. And I guess my question is just, where do you think that lack of awareness or that lack of involvement with young professionals and people of different ethnicities, where do you think that lack of awareness stems from in our society as a whole?
Jesse, thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's a great question. And I wish I knew. I probably have $1 billion if I did. I think it starts with us not having the intellectual curiosity and sometimes thinking we know it already. And young people, I'm sure like yourself, feel that older folks don't want to hear what you have to say because you don't have the shared life experiences.
Sure.
Which is why engagement around D&I is so important, because what it says is everybody's voice is important. And the more voices you have, the better the end product. So, I wish I had something more, scholarly to say, but
I know that it's a deep question, and it's definitely a question I think that is ongoing and that we're all kind of trying to figure out, especially in these times, how to become more aware and overall. So I appreciate your take on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right,
I see Jordan has, go ahead.
I was just going to say right off the bat, Jesse has a tough question for you, but yeah, so Jordan just sent a message in the chat and said, what brands or companies do you think have done a good job at promoting D&I in the workplace, particularly over the past year? And any best practices that they've done that we can apply to our organization.
So I will tell you, I had a conversation with Ben & Jerry's earlier this year, and I will tell you they are doing a phenomenal job. But so here's the thing that I would say about brands. That point about us not just saying we're good, but actually having a track record of being good. The reason Ben & Jerry's is at the top of my list in terms of organizational practices is because they live their brand. And this has been going on with them for years. And so the statement that their CEO put out right after the murder of George Floyd, the past practices that they have had around developing employee resource groups and allowing employees to take off days to volunteer at different charities that support certain causes, and being so vocal around not just diversity and inclusion, but climate change. And they're a progressive organization that lives their values. So I would suggest for you to check them out. Nike's done a great job. Nike took a lot of heat when they began that movement with Colin Kaepernick. And if you can believe it, that was 4 or 5 years ago when he started the kneeling due to police brutality. But it just somehow or another got all just modeled with patriotism. They have done their best to kind of bring, they weathered the storm, if you remember. So, you got to be courageous sometimes and step out. I can tell you what not to do. There are some things also don't do. If you recall, the Wells Fargo CEO recently had to take back some statements he made about finding diverse talent. It's create a maelstrom for the Wells Fargo comms team. Nightmare. So one of the things I will tell you to do, find a way to get your CEO, sit down if you can, or with your chief communications officer to say, we need a strategy to help our CEO lean in on this. And so that we don't make mistakes. Are we living our value? Do your own internal strength test, but don't let, this is your opportunity to position comms for the long haul. How often have we talked about getting a seat at the table, which I hate that phrase, but this is your opportunity to make sure your seat is branded to the floor at the table, right? But you got to come with something. And what I mean by coming with something, be a counselor to help your CEOs know what to do in these times of crisis that best positions your organization.
Thank you so much for that. We have 3 more questions that came through. So Deanna asked, what's a good way to reach out to a more diverse network of people as we're looking to expand our membership and board, and where do you start with this?
So I would start here, HBCUs. I know you have at least 3 in Pennsylvania. Cheney. I would also start with your PRSSA chapters. Talk to the faculty advisors to get some deeper and richer engagement, to get students, comp the students, get them in, give them internships, maybe give them a role by being an ex officio on your boards, right? Figure out a way to attract them, and then maybe do a program or 2 a year around these targeted areas. And if I were your president, I would not be remiss, or what's the word I'm looking for? I wouldn't shy away from putting this in an op-ed in my newsletter, sending it to the newspaper. People still do that, posting it in my social media feed that I'm the president of this chapter, and we are leaning into diversity and inclusion, and we want you to be part of our organization. Call me so we can talk about it. Those are just a few quick ways that I think that don't cost you much, right? But they send a really strong signal. Here's the other thing I'm going to say. It's a phrase in the Bible, be not weary in well-doing, okay? What that means is this. Don't stop because at that meeting, you didn't get the students that you invited, or in that quarter, you didn't get the membership that you were looking for, or this diverse group fell through. Don't stop, right? As an African-American, I can tell you, there have been in our struggle over these 400 years we've been here, times when things have been let down. Remember when women didn't have the right to vote? Remember when Blacks couldn't go to the same restaurants as whites? Maybe you don't remember, but these things really happened. But what if people gave up the fight before the fight was won? So don't give up. keep at it, and don't use, hey, it didn't work that time, as an example to not do it again. Keep at it.
That's great. You're absolutely right. So we have another question from Charlene, and she said, I would like to know how to implement such strategies in a nonprofit organization that may have BOD, that may not be, yeah, so sorry. So that may not be as receptive. I cover their newsletters and I implement as much as content as I can in my communications corner, up to her discretion, and she uses them monthly. And she's looking into functioning as a BSU advisor carefully.
So this is really where the rubber meets the road. This is not easy. I'm going to give you a story that's a real life story because it's mine. I started in 2018 trying to get that new PRSA D&I strategic plan done. I hit wall after wall after wall. I even had people that voted against doing with the research. And I didn't even tell you about the research. In 2019, we did 11 months of study with executive interviews, focus groups, and then a huge quantitative study that went to all members, and we had about a 19% response rate, which is, if you did the math, that's about 3,000 people responded to the survey. A big, big deal. Even after the research, we put the strategic plan together, and there were naysayers that said, nah, we don't want this. So at the end of 19, at the beginning of 20, we were changing things and meeting and changing and meeting. So the art of the compromise is important, but don't give up. So there were many days I said, why am I doing this? I have a day job, I have a life, I have a family, but I really love PRSA and I really believe in this movement. So, Charlene, conversations, you can't go around, and you have to work within the boundaries, right? So you have to influence your board. And data is one of those things that people can't refute often. So I would just share with them, hey, look at all these organizations and how high-performing organizations are more diverse, and look at the results and the outcomes and see what other nonprofits are doing. When you present that information to your leadership in a cohesive, passionate, but clear and careful way, I don't believe that they will consistently say no. If it takes meeting with individual board members and finding a couple of allies or ambassadors for the cause, do that, because it's too important to not do and just throw your hands up. So I hope that's helpful.
Great. So then we have another question from Taylor, and she says, how are you promoting the D&I scholarship endowment and getting people to support and give?
Ooh, where is Taylor? Taylor, Fifi, Fifi. I need you. Okay, so here's what we have been doing. We started with past PRSA presidents and chairs, and we had a quiet phase. And then after the quiet phase was concluded, we had raised somewhere around 18,000. We did a public appeal, which sounds like you guys have not seen, that went out to all 20,000 PRSA members. And we asked for folks to give $5, $10, whatever you can. Every gift counts. So that's going on right now. I did a personal appeal to every single chapter president within PRSA with a special email appeal. And that netted somewhere around additional $4,000 so far. So we now are going on, write this down, everybody, write it down, please do. Tuesday, October 27, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We will be broadcasting, simulcasting on all PRSA platforms, a virtual concert. It will feature a Grammy Award-winning jazz artist. And the reason we have her is because we don't have a lot of money. And she is a Grammy-nominated artist And she said she would do it for the honorarium that we had. So, and she's going to be great. So I know jazz may not be your, music of choice, but it's going to be a fun event. So Barbara Morrison, look her up. We also have an thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Marilyn. Tell a friend. We also have an up and coming country artist called Everett. And they are within the demo of like Jesse and Nicole, if I'm going by how I think your age may be, on how you look, although you cannot tell with me. So they sing country music. And they will be doing their broadcast from Belmont University in Nashville. So they'll have a live audience. In addition, the Historically Black College and University, Fisk University, will be closing out with a beautiful Negro spiritual. So we got jazz, we got country, we got gospel. It's going to be fabulous. And it's the first ever. So that concert, we are making it available to anybody with a computer, a phone, an iPad that wants to come. And we're doing our best to get the word out in a big way about that event. I will be pushing out to chapters again to ask them, but to consider at the chapter level, making a gift to the fund of $250 or so. And I believe PRSA Pittsburgh has stepped up. I'm pretty sure you have. I just don't remember off the top of my head. But if you haven't, and if you haven't or not, get that donation in. So Taylor, I will put my email here in the chat box for anybody who wants to reach out. It may not seem like it, but I really do have a day job. But I do feel very passionate about this. And I want us to hit that number, and I want it all to go well. So.
That's awesome. I think you recruited some attendees today. So that's good news.
Be on the lookout. It's coming.
And then we just have one more question in the chat for now, but it is from Marilyn. And she asks, how are we connecting with National Association of Black Journalists and other groups?
I'm so glad you asked. So in the strategic plan, ColorCom, which you guys may know ColorCom more than other organizations, BEEPers, Black Public Relations Society of America, the Society of Hispanic Public Relations, and NABJ. That is one of the strategies. They each have their own organizations. So we don't want to, be, what's the word I'm looking for? Poaching members. But I believe that with partnerships, we can bring greater value to all of our members. We just have to think of strategic ways to do that, right? So we hadn't landed on what the strategy will look like that's beneficial for both them and us. But I will say this, PRSA is the world's largest communications organization. If we get a cold, you better believe these other organizations have pneumonia or on oxygen. So having said that, I think we have a strategic advantage in terms of engaging with these other groups. And so when prayerfully December 5 will come and I'll be named chair-elect, when I move into a senior executive role with PRSA, those are the kinds of things I'll be wanting to dig in on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
I don't know if there are any questions. I'll give everyone one last chance to raise their hand and see if they have anything to ask. But if not,
it's been great.
This has been great. This is amazing. Thank you for kicking off our summit series and joining us today and presenting. It was awesome and great to meet you.
Yeah. I'm delighted.
Thank
you for inviting me, Jordan, wherever you are. I know he was going through with his loss and his family. Mm-hmm. My heart still goes out to you. And I just thank you, PRSA Pittsburgh. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much.
Felicia, this is Jordan. I appreciate your time and conversation today with our members. We very much appreciate it.
You bet. And Lily, I will make this a PDF and email it to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then everyone who's attended, we hope to see you at our next one, which will be next Wednesday at noon as well. I can't remember off the top of my head what that is, but see you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.